When firefighters, police, and paramedics storm John's farm, they tell him his property is on fire and an elderly woman is trapped inside. Except there's no fire, just his deranged neighbor Karen, who will stop at nothing to destroy him. She thought her lies would force everyone to bend to her will, but one crucial mistake turned the tables against her. And when the handcuffs clicked around Karen's wrists, it was clear justice had won today. The rhythmic clang of metal against wood echoed through the field as John drove another nail into the busted fence post. The late afternoon sun pressed down on him, heat rising in waves off the dry dirt. Sweat clung to his neck, but he barely noticed. He'd been at this since sunrise, and he was finally making progress. Then, like a screech from the depths of hell, the unmistakable sound of tires skidding on gravel cut through the calm. John didn't need to look up. He already knew. Karen. A car door slammed so hard it rattled on its hinges, and a pair of expensive heels clicked against the ground with the kind of confidence only possessed by people who had never been told no in their lives. Karen stormed toward him like a woman on a mission, her manicured nails gripping a clipboard as though it were a sword of justice. Her expression was a mix of fury and self-righteous triumph, as if she had finally found the ammunition she needed to rid the world of the atrocity that was a farm. "John, this is completely unacceptable," she shrieked, flinging her arm dramatically toward the barn. Her voice had the shrill, commanding tone of someone who had spent far too much time berating cashiers and demanding to speak to the manager. John exhaled slowly, dragging a hand down his face. "Karen," he muttered, barely glancing up. "What is it this time?" She ignored him, still pointing at the barn as if it had personally insulted her. "I have reported your farm to the HOA for non-compliance. Your fences, your animals, and frankly, your entire lifestyle are a disgrace to this community." John blinked. Once. Twice. Then, ever so slowly, he straightened up and turned to face her fully. "Let's break this down for a second." His farm, which had been here for over a century, was apparently a disgrace to the community. The fences, which literally served the function of keeping animals in, were an offense to her delicate sensibilities. The animals, which were, again, on a farm, were somehow a problem in an area zoned specifically for agricultural use. And his lifestyle? Well, apparently, having a hard-earned working farm made him persona non grata in the kingdom of manicured lawns and overpriced hedges. Karen wasn't just a bad neighbor. She was a walking, talking, bureaucratic nightmare, fueled by unchecked entitlement and a burning need to control everything in a half-mile radius of her overpriced suburban castle. Ever since John inherited this land from his grandfather, she had made it her mission to run him out. First, it was complaints about the unsightly barn. Then, it was noise violations for the sound of livestock. At one point, she even tried to get the property rezoned, arguing that a farm had no place in a rural farming district. If she had it her way, he would have been forced to pave over the fields and build a goddamn golf course just to meet her aesthetic standards. But John had neither the time nor the patience for whatever nonsense she was trying to pull today. He wiped the sweat from his brow with the back of his hand. "Karen, for the last time, my farm isn't under HOA jurisdiction. You have no authority here." Most people, when faced with a blatant, undeniable fact, would back down. Not Karen. She narrowed her eyes, lips curling into a knowing smirk, like a snake that had just spotted its next meal. "Oh, but I do," she said smoothly. The satisfaction in her voice made his skin crawl. "And when I'm done with you, you'll have no choice but to sell this filth." The word dripped with disgust. Then, in one swift motion, she pulled out her phone and started snapping pictures. Her eyes darted across the land like a vulture, scanning for fresh carrion, hunting for anything she could use against him. A broken fence post, a stray piece of equipment, a cow standing in a way she didn't approve of. It didn't matter. She would make something up if she had to. John gritted his teeth. He had better things to do than entertain whatever power trip she was on today. So, with a slow, measured breath, he turned his back on her and went back to hammering the fence post, pointedly ignoring her rambling about property values and community image. For a moment, it seemed like she might actually leave. Then, just as she reached her car, she muttered something under her breath. Soft. Almost too quiet to hear. Enjoy it while you can. You won't be here much longer. John stilled. His grip tightened around the hammer, his knuckles whitening. That wasn't a complaint. That wasn't a tantrum. That was a promise, and he had no idea just how far she was willing to go. The afternoon sun hung low over the fields, casting long golden shadows across the land. John had been out since early morning, tending to the fields and making minor repairs after last night's storm. The rhythmic creak of wood and the soft hum of the wind were the only sounds he had heard all day, until now. A distant, high-pitched wail cut through the quiet, a sound that made his stomach twist before his mind had even fully registered it. Sirens, loud, multiple. John turned his head toward the dirt road, just in time to see the first set of flashing red and blue lights crest over the hill, speeding straight toward his property. His grip tightened around the rusty pair of pliers in his hand. Then came the next vehicle, and another. A whole convoy of emergency responders, fire trucks, ambulances, and squad cars was tearing up the driveway, kicking up a thick cloud of dust as they closed in like they were responding to a full-blown disaster. John's chest tightened as he yanked off his gloves and broke into a jog, his boots kicking up dirt. What the hell is going on? The moment the first fire truck skidded to a stop, a team of firefighters burst out, moving with urgency. EMTs unloaded gurneys, police officers fanned out with stern expressions, and the sheer chaos of it all sent a bolt of unease down John's spine. Then came the fire chief, a burly man with a thick, graying mustache. He marched toward John with the kind of authority that suggested he had seen just about everything and had no patience for nonsense. His heavy boots crunched against the gravel as he closed the gap in record time. Sir, we received a 911 call about an elderly woman trapped inside a burning structure on this property. Where is she? John stared at him. A burning structure? An elderly woman? His mind tripped over itself, trying to catch up. He turned, scanning the property, his house, his barn, the fields beyond. Everything was exactly as it had been 10 minutes ago. No fire, no smoke, no trapped woman. Nothing. His jaw tensed. A what? We were informed that a structure was in flames and that an elderly woman was screaming for help inside, the fire chief continued, his expression grim. We need immediate access to all buildings, now. John took a step back, reeling, and then like a slow-motion train wreck, it clicked. Karen. He could almost hear her voice in his head, dripping with smug self-satisfaction. Enjoy it while you can. You won't be here much longer. John had dealt with a lot of her nonsense over the past year. Petty complaints, fake HOA violations, even attempts to forcefully rezone his farm. But this was next-level crazy. He clenched his jaw. Sir, we need access now, one of the paramedics barked, already making a beeline for the barn. John snapped back to reality. Hold on. There's no fire. There's no trapped woman. This is a false report. The fire chief's brows furrowed. He wasn't the type to take things at face value. You're sure? John gestured around them, voice sharp. Do you see any smoke? Any fire? Anything even remotely suggesting an emergency? The chief paused, glancing around. His crew hesitated, scanning the property more critically. Then one of the police officers, a younger guy with sharp eyes, pulled out a notepad. Sir, the 911 call came from a concerned neighbor who claimed they witnessed smoke and heard screaming from inside one of your buildings. John let out a slow, sharp exhale, rubbing a hand over his face. Let me guess, he muttered. His patients had long since left the building. Short blonde bob, pearl necklace, perpetual scowl. The officer and his partner exchanged glances. You know her. John let out a humorless chuckle, though there was nothing funny about this. He crossed his arms, shoulders tightening. Oh, I know her, he said, his voice laced with irritation. And if she just wasted your time like I know she did, she's in for a world of trouble. He turned toward the road, and sure enough, there she was, standing just across the street, arms folded, watching the scene unfold, like she had just delivered justice instead of committed a felony. Her expression was a mix of smug satisfaction and calculated innocence, as if she had expected John to be hauled away in handcuffs rather than be standing there, very much not under arrest. John's fists clenched at his sides. Karen had just made the biggest mistake of her life. Before John could get another word in, the air was suddenly ripped apart by a familiar, high-pitched screech from across the road. "Finally, do your jobs and shut this place down." Every head turned, and there she was. Karen came storming across the pavement like she was leading a victorious army, chin raised, heels clacking against the gravel, as if the sheer force of her indignation could shatter the ground beneath her. She flipped her hair with the dramatic flourish of someone who had just orchestrated a brilliant takedown, her expression a perfect blend of smugness and manufactured outrage. John barely resisted the urge to laugh. She stopped just short of the officers, placing herself at the center of the scene like a self-appointed judge, jury, and executioner. "I called 911 because this man is a danger to our community," she declared, as if she were giving an official press statement. "He has illegal animals, hazardous structures, and I heard a woman screaming for help." The officers, firefighters, and paramedics all just stared. A few of them blinked. One of the firefighters subtly glanced at the sky, as if asking some higher power for patience. The lead officer, a grizzled man who had clearly seen it all, let out a slow breath and looked Karen up and down with the kind of expression a teacher gives when a student hands in a test with every single answer wrong. "Ma'am," he said, voice flat with exhaustion, "are you saying you personally witnessed someone in distress inside his home?" "Yes," Karen snapped, her nose lifting an extra inch in the air. "I saw smoke. I heard cries for help." "Yeah." For a beat, no one spoke. Then the officer pulled out his notepad, flipping it open with agonizing slowness. "Interesting," he muttered, scribbling something down. "Because we just reviewed the 911 call." Karen's victorious expression faltered. The officer continued, calm and measured, as if he were speaking to a particularly slow child. "And it was made from your cell phone while you were sitting in your car across the street." Karen blinked. For a brief, glorious moment, silence. Then, That's absurd," she sputtered, her voice an octave higher. I was only being a good citizen." "And do good citizens file knowingly false emergency reports, wasting public resources and endangering actual lives?" Karen's face drained of color. The confidence, the smug superiority, it crumbled. "You don't understand," she whispered, her voice suddenly small. "You were just committing a crime," the officer interrupted, his voice now sharper. "And lucky for us, your call was recorded." The weight of those words landed like a hammer. Karen staggered half a step back. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. The wheels in her head were spinning, frantically searching for an escape route. John crossed his arms and watched her unravel, a slow smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. This was better than anything he could have planned. As the officers moved in, Karen's confidence crumbled. Her self-righteous rage twisted into full-blown panic. "You can't arrest me! I'm HOA president!" she shrieked, voice cracking. The lead officer sighed. "Ma'am, the HOA has no legal authority here, but you know who does? The sheriff's department." She stumbled back. But you filed a false report, mobilized emergency services, and tried to weaponize the legal system. That's multiple offenses," the officer listed off. "You're coming with us." The handcuffs snapped around her wrists. "This isn't over," she spat at John, eyes blazing. He tipped his hat, unfazed. "Oh, I think it is." As the squad car pulled away, John turned